Last week we did our open-ended Q&A, ask us questions so we can give you some answers on some of the things that you guys are wondering about or, getting the correct information about. So we're going to go through that now and give you those answers. Okay, so for Queensland legislation, the rules in place are that yes, you can have 100 mil lift and 50 mil tyres. However, that's on the proviso that you meet the engineering requirements. So for non-ESC vehicles, which will be for the 70 series, for example, up to the 8th month 2016 with no DPF, you would require a lanes change test for each car. So there's no blanket ruling where you design a suspension kit and say, here we go, unless it's done under the federal SSM approval. There's different rules when you have an SSM approval about how you comply to post-rego legislation. So if it's a suspension kit that's not backed by the IPA of a GVM upgrade, then every single car would be required to be lanes change tested. Now, if your car is fitted with electronic stability control and it's post-rego in Queensland, the only way to confirm that vehicle is via a ESC robotic test. That means they literally put a robot in the car and the robot does the test. Queensland Transport have not accepted any other form or means of verification. Now, if that suspension kit or GVM upgrade is backed by an SSM IPA, then you can do the ESC test and have that kit approved post-rego. However, nobody has been able to make a 70 series with high lift and bigger tyres or high lift in general pass the ESC test. J-Max ourselves, we spent a lot of money, not to mention some other companies that we deal with have spent a lot of money and no one's been able to pass that ESC test due to the narrow track and the high center of gravity of a 70 series. Now, people are saying yes, but what about the new J7 spec? It's NB1, which is the vehicle category it comes in, not MC class. So therefore, a vehicle with NB1 doesn't require to have ESC. However, the Queensland legislation does state if a car is brought to market with ESC, so you bring your car in, you've registered it, it's a Toyota Land Cruiser, it has ESC fitted, NB1 category, you still must verify ESC, which means just because the car was supplied to market in NB1 doesn't void the ESC testing. So to answer the question in black and white, can I do an ESC car, 4-inch lift or bigger tyres, whatever, in Queensland post-rego? The answer is no, unless they have a robotic test evidence to prove otherwise. And from our experience, it ain't happening. The car is just not designed to do it. It barely passes in its factory state. The other question is, can I certify in Queensland larger tyres than 50 mil? The answer is clearly no. Queensland have no methodology to approve bigger tyres post-rego than 50 mil. That's in their National Code of Practice or their QCOP part of it. Now, good example, so J-Max as a business have passed robotic testing on the 300 series with 35-inch tyres. So that means, yes, we can do 3 inches of lift and 35s post-rego, except for in Queensland, we can't do the 35s because we can only go 50 mil tyre. So Queensland go, yes, we accept the lift because you've passed the ESC. However, there's a part of the legislation that says you can't exceed 50 mil, period. No engineer can sign off on it. No mod plater can put a mod plate on your car. There is no allowance for modifying tyres, period. So until that legislation changes, then this is where we are. So if you've got any questions, you can always talk to TMR direct at Vehicle Standards. They will give you the information you need. So if someone says, hey, I can mod plate this or I can certify that, check with TMR. That's the easiest way to save yourself money and save yourself the headache of getting it done wrong. Creative Conversions are obviously their standard package is, I think it's an Outback armor system. So obviously if you're going to replace that, you need to make sure that that system is compliant with what they're doing as far as the test evidence, etc., for those heavier vehicle classes. So remembering that a lot of companies don't make suspension to do those weights around a 300 and also have test evidence to verify it. So I suppose J-Max have done a lot of testing with other companies as well regarding dual cab 300 series suspension. So to be perfectly honest, you don't want to lift these things over 3 inches in the front, period. Some of the dual cabs setups need to be a little bit lower in the front due to the fact that a 300 series is not like a 200 series. They are a lighter car, so alloy body panels, they move the engine back, the engine's a bit lighter, so a lot of that front weight that we had in a 200 series dual cab isn't there. So getting the balance on a 300 is very, very critical, and it's not been the easiest thing to achieve. So without going crazy heavy in the rear spring and sacrificing ride quality. So the reality of it is, guys, you know, 3 inches max in the front, 2 to 3 inches is where you're at. Things like, you know, making sure you're running UCAs and things like that, but the appropriate spring rate in the back. And that's something we're seeing from a lot of dual cab variants coming through, as they don't have enough spring rate. So answer the question, you know, in a dual cab, I would say, you know, 2 to 3 inches, depending on how the car's set up. So the ZR2, we're not actually working on a GVM on that currently. However, we do have suspension in the process of road testing and dyno tuning. So as far as, you know, shocks, etc. goes in our Alpha 2.5, but as far as the GVM space, nothing current. So high lift suspension kits on post-rego cars in Queensland, as I stated in an earlier post, obviously post-rego, you need to lanes change test every car. That is for non-ESC. So potentially you can have a 3 or 4 inch lift in a non-ESC 70. However, every single car would require to be lanes change test unless it's done under the SSM GVM banner. There's a different set of rules for stuff that's covered by the GVM and the SSM approval versus a suspension kit that's just a suspension kit. So unless there's a federal approval based around that suspension kit on its own, then you would have to test every car. However, again, when it comes to ESC on 70 series, unless every single car passes an ESC test, you cannot blanket anything unless it's done via an SSM. So the other side of it is, we haven't seen a single company pass an ESC robotic test on a 70 series with high lift or bigger tires, and many companies have tried. So unless you have that verification, then you cannot do it. And if someone was to put a mod plate on your car, then it is non-compliant. I think if you really want the details on that, confirm for yourself, contact vehicle standards, and ask the questions before you spend your money, and make sure that whatever you're getting done by whomever you're getting it done, that it is correct and it is legal, because at the end of the day, you'll be spending money and you'll be getting defected or put off the road regardless. So WA GCM upgrades there. I know WA had a post-rego, the guys at the transport there had a no GCM upgrades policy. From what I'm aware is they're starting to loosen that noose and saying that you can do it. However, they're gonna have a test criteria to tick. So I'm not sure what WA has set as their legislative path for GCM. However, I do believe that once the Queensland LS16 is met with the dyno trailer, then we can approach WA and ask them if that's acceptable to them. The problem you've got is that there is no other methodology been approved apart from a dyno trailer setup to do GCM increases. So, you know, how they want that information and to verify what they're doing, that's something you'd need to talk to WA Transport and say, what is acceptable from a test data, but from what we're getting from all states, the dyno trailer is it. There's a dyno trailer in Townsville with AEP. I think there may be one in Melbourne. They're the only two dyno trailers in the country. So, but hopefully the Queensland GCM LS16 may clear it up. We've been working on a specific drag link, something a little bit different to what everyone else has been doing. And we're still in engineering and testing on that because it is a little bit outside the box. So we just need to make sure that we have that engineering and test data and FEA analysis and all of the real world figures to ensure that that's going to be safe. So I think with a lot of drag links, what we've seen over the years is too heavy, you know, and fatigue failures and things like that. So we just need to make sure that all of our stuff is ticking the box, but at the moment we're going through those processes still. So if you're running a 3-inch lift on a Land Cruiser 70 series, so you don't want to run a 35, look, a 33 12.5 or even a 315. So a 315 is about 34.6 or 0.8 inches off the top of my head. So it still meets that 50 mil increase in tire size. So either a 33 or a 315 would work great. Okay, so what's actually happened with that model variant is what Toyota have done as a rule, and they've done it right since the VDJ started, is you'll have one body variant for each car. So whether that's a dual cab, a single cab, a wagon, or a troopy. Now each of that body model variant will come in 2 trim options, which would be a Workmate or a GXL. So literally it's the same body, but they have 2 trim levels. For some reason, Toyota have gone through, when they brought out the 1GD, the 4-cylinder, they've made the GXL dual cab its own variant in a GXL. So now they have a body model for the Workmate and a body model for the dual cab based on trim, which doesn't really make a lot of sense, but this is what's happened. So they haven't done it for any other models, just that one specific model. So we don't know what their reasoning is, but what that does is it means that we have to go to the feds, resubmit to say, hey, Toyota have changed this body model and we need it to be added to our approval. So that's where that is, and all that's been done in the background. So we're just waiting for the federal government to process that. But it was a very unusual change to change something midstream like they did, and only on one car. So I'm not sure what their thinking is, but it has been submitted and it's in the process. So you know, hopefully it won't be too long. Yes, yeah, so we can get stock, and we have had stock in on the shelf for the troopies right through. So if you've got any questions, probably contact our office. We're located at Bells Creek on the Sunshine Coast, just near the Caloundra exit on the highway. A lot of our manufacturing is done on the Sunshine Coast as well. So we've been working with a couple of companies regarding our own 6x6 or 200 series 6-speed auto conversion for the 6x6. We've been working on it for a couple of years now. We currently have one in my 6x6 at the present, but we were doing a lot of R&D on that and still final tuning and bits and pieces, so it's coming along. So hopefully it won't be too far off. We're just at the pointy end of it now. Okay, so single cab with a tub look. To be honest, there's no weight in the back of that, so leaf springs are always going to be average. You know, obviously you can go down the parabolic route, or you can go down the coil conversion side of it as well. So I would say, you know, parabolics or coil conversion, probably, you know, if you want a big variable load, parabolics can be a bit problematic. 200 series GCM, so obviously Queensland have legislated LS16, which is the GCM increase. So they have set their own test parameters. So we're currently out testing with AEP in Townsville at the moment, doing the 200 series to verify it against Queensland's legislation. Obviously, it's only Queensland that have made that provision, but I think the fact that it's a state government approved test, as we go around the country, I feel that other engineers around the state that have the ability to sign off and do stuff will accept that test evidence. So obviously overseas testing was never legislatively brought in here, and that's why you have that pre-rego versus post-rego. So when it comes to post-rego, it's all about legislation, and you need to tick the box for that post-rego legislation. So to answer it in short, our LC200 stuff is in the process of physical testing. With the leaf spring setups, what you've got to remember is the leaf spring setups that you purchase, they have to be specifically to meet, you know, the load rating, etc. So for example, for our leaf springs, when we do a 3-inch lift, they're designed to be 3 inches of lift at the load stated required. So if you're chasing just suspension, you know, it all comes back to that the load on the spring is the right spring and load combination. So if you use a spring with more camber in it that's supposed to carry more load and you don't carry the load, you're going to end up with that vertical shackle angle. Unfortunately, that's how leaf springs work. So, you know, otherwise what will happen is When the leaf flattens out, it overextends the shackle, can destroy the bushes, can break leaves, all those sorts of things. Will we be doing an N80 coil conversion? Look, we had a Hilux coil conversion we did many years ago, and we opted out of it just purely because I didn't believe it was the market for us. So at this stage, I don't see me doing it. You know, never say never, but at this stage, no. The Patriot build was a special build done for Patriot back in the day, and it had its methodologies to get its engineering done and pass the way that it's been done now. So there is methodologies to go down the path of 6x6 portals, airbags, etc. However, over the last 5 years, it's becoming more and more complex on how that's done and how that's approved. So JMax are currently working through that at the moment with air and portals and wide track, etc. So more of a complicated question. Can it be done? Potentially, yes. However, we're just jumping through some hoops to finalize stuff. Okay, so Mark's portals, the portals they were making up until now are now being changed to their new improved design. So whilst we've done plenty of coil portal cars for overseas, as well as portal 6x6. So we've done quite a few as far as the compatibility goes. They work excellent, as you would see on the Patriot build as well. However, the portals that Mark's about to finalise now in development will have higher load ratings, etc. So we're currently working with Mark's at the moment for our 6x6 conversion. So how do they work? They work great, and but watch this space. So the Ranger approval's been in since early in the year, so any day. We're expecting it any day. So we're right at the pointy end of it now, and we've just finalised our diff drop for the Ranger as well. So yeah, very close.